Hey everybody, this is Mike Dana with Jazz Education Abroad, and we're going to spend a little time today working on modes on the guitar. Specifically, these are the modes of the major scale. Hopefully you've spent some time on your major scales already with the video and the handouts from that. These are the modes that you may have heard people refer to as the Dorian or the Lydian or the Aeolian, those sorts of things. And this is the first of a series of videos that are going to cover this. What we're going to hit on today, for the most part, is the fingerings for the guitar. So let's jump in, okay? When we talk about modes, the way I was taught this as a young musician was if you take a C major scale and you begin and end on the second note of the scale, in this case that would be D, that's a D Dorian scale. And that's true. But as you'll see over the next couple of videos, that isn't really the whole story, and I don't think it's very helpful to the jazz musician who's dealing with chord changes all the time. But my feeling is, knowing a bunch of cool theory and being able to read chord changes doesn't help you if you can't physically play the modes on the guitar. So that's the first thing. That's what we're going to do today. So here's how we're going to do this. Muscle memory means that your fingers automatically go to, in this case, a G major scale. And I can play a G major scale and talk to you guys about whatever I want to talk about, right? Because my fingers, I've practiced that so much, my fingers know where to go. That's why in the earlier videos I was really stressing that you spend a lot of time with these major scales, because now it's really going to pay off for you. Okay, let's take G major. This is the 6-2 fingering that we worked on previously. And let's see what happens if I, instead of thinking of that as a G major sound, okay, very pretty, sounds nice for G major, but I'm going to learn the Dorian mode, and in this particular case it's going to be an A Dorian. Now, the Dorian is the second mode, and in the key of G, the second note is A. So, if I take the notes of the key of G, which by the way are all the regular natural notes except there's an F sharp. So if I apply the key signature, so to speak, of the key of G, sharping the F, but I begin and end on A, I get an A Dorian scale. And it sounds really nice. And that is an A Dorian scale. Now, it's incorrect to say, though, that G major and A Dorian, well, they're the same thing. They're very similar in that they include exactly the same notes, right? They have an F sharp and all the other notes are natural. But they're not the same scale, because when I think of A Dorian, A is my 1, that's the tonic, and the whole idea of what are the chord tones of A Dorian versus what are the chord tones of G major is completely different, all right? So please don't confuse those two things. Now, since we're guitar players, we need to understand, though, that there is a relationship between all these modes. And the Dorian is the second mode of the major scale, and the A Dorian specifically is the second mode specifically of the G major scale. What that means for you is that you need to approach the A Dorian on the guitar in the exact same position where you would also play G major. But they're not the same scale, and they have totally different chord tones and other things, which we'll get into in subsequent videos, okay? So, let's keep going and learn all these modes. What about a B Phrygian scale? Okay, the Phrygian is the third scale. So if I wanted to play a B Phrygian mode or scale, and by the way, sometimes I'll say mode and sometimes I'll say scale, and I kind of use those terms interchangeably on the video. I don't want to confuse anybody. Okay, so the B Phrygian is the third mode. If I want to play a B Phrygian, what key has B for its third note? Well, again, the key of G. So a B Phrygian has exactly the same notes as the key of G. It has an F sharp and no other notes. C sharp in there. I shouldn't have done that. So that's the B Phrygian. And we can go through all of these real quickly. The next mode is the Lydian. That's the fourth mode. And in the key of G, the Lydian mode that you have on the fourth degree of a G scale, which is C, is a C Lydian. It's the same fingering and the same notes, but now I have a different one. Now my tonic, my one is C. If you listen to that scale, that Lydian scale has that kind of quirky note, right? That sharp 4 really gives it a unique sound. So moving on, the fifth mode is Dorian, and in the key of G, the fifth mode would be D Dorian, and it's the same notes beginning on D, and that goes with dominant chords. The sixth mode is the Aeolian. In the key of G, it would be an E Aeolian. Okay, for a minor chord. And the seventh mode is Locrian. In the key of G, the seventh note is F sharp. That would be an F sharp, Locrian sound. So the problem is everything I just said is true, but it doesn't necessarily help you when you're improvising because you're always trying to relate back to some other key, and it gets really, really confusing. So let's do this on this video. Let's start on the key of C, and let's take a C major scale. Now there's some different ways you could play this. I think I'm going to play it with the fingering that is the 6-4 fingering. And you should remember this from before. Starts on the 6th string with my 4th finger. Here's C major. Now if you look at your handout for modes, you'll see that it talks about thinking of modes as though they're part of a family. So let's talk about the C major chord, right? The C major 7th. It has in it a 1, 3, 5, 7. Well, the major scale has in it a 1, 3, 5, 7. It has some other notes too. But the major scale and the major chord are a perfect fit together. But there's another mode that has 1, 3, 5, 7, and that's the Lydian. Because if you look at your second page of the handout, you'll see that the Lydian scale is exactly like a major scale, but it has a raised 4th. So I'm going to take my C major scale, which has a regular 4th right there, the F, and I'm going to play a raised 4th in F sharp. Right there. Okay, so that would be C Lydian, and that's also a major sound. So there are two modes in the major family. The Lydian, which has a raised 4th, and the major, which the major scale has a modal name. It's called the Ionian Mode. Most people just say major scale, but some people like to show off how smart they are and say the Ionian Mode. They mean the same thing. But there's two major sounding modes, right? Lydian and Ionian, same as the major scale. There's one mode that's dominant 7th sounding because it has a lowered 7th in it, and that's the Mixolydian. So I encourage you to learn your modes based on what's the formula, what do you do to the major scale to get it to be that mode? What's the formula for a Lydian mode? Do you know? You raise the 4th. What's the formula for an Ionian mode? You don't do anything, you play the major scale. Well, what's the formula for a Mixolydian? You play a lowered 7th. So let's do this in the key of C. I'm starting on the 6th string, 4th finger, and when I get to the 7th note of the C scale, which is B, I'm going to play a B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's my lowered 7th. Hear it? 3, 4, 5, 6, lowered 7. And that sounds like a C dominant sound. And as we kind of move from the brightest modes to the darkest modes, we keep lowering things. So after we've lowered the 7th to give us Mixolydian, we're going to lower the 7th and the 3rd, and that'll give us Dorian. Now in the key of C, The third that I'm going to lower, E, becomes E flat, and the seventh, B, is now B flat. So now I'm playing a C scale that has B flats and E flats in it. Well, that's the key signature for the key of B flat, right? So C Dorian is the second mode of B flat major. And that's how I learned it when I was a kid. But now that I'm older and wiser, I don't think of it that way. I think of it as the C Dorian has a lowered third and a lowered seventh, just like the minor seventh chord does. So C Dorian and C minor seventh sound perfect over each other. Let me do this slowly. C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. Now, the one thing I will agree with is that on the guitar, C Dorian, the second mode, is the second mode of B flat major. So is C Dorian and B flat, are they B flat major, are they the same scale? No. Are they fingered in the same place? Yep, they are. And that's what's important. So as you go down the handout, you'll see that the Aeolian is the next darkest scale, and it has a lowered third and seventh and sixth. So in the key of C, I'm going to flat my B's. I'm going to flat my my B flats are now flatted. My E's are now E flats, and the sixth of C, the A, those are now flatted as well. The key signature of B flat and E flat and A flat, that's like the key of E flat major or E flat minor. So the Aeolian mode is the sixth mode of the major scale, and sometimes classically trained musicians refer to that as the natural minor. Okay, so it means the exact same thing. So here's C Aeolian, same position. 1, 2, lowered third E flat, 4, 5, A flat, B flat. And the Aeolian and the Dorian both sound minor, but the Aeolian sounds a little darker sounding because it has one extra lowered note. And if you want to sound even darker than that, the Phrygian mode, which is the third mode, has another flat. It has a lowered third and seventh and sixth and a lowered second. So that means that I'm going to have B flats, E flats, A flats, and now D flats. That's 4 flats. Well, what's the key that has a signature of 4 flats? That's A flat major. So now I have to think a little bit. Is there an A flat major? You know, sometimes when I'm learning my modes, when I get to certain modes, I might go, you know, I think I'm going to have to change positions. You don't have to do it here because there is an A flat fingering in 5th position. It's the 6-1 fingering. Remember, that's the one that actually starts out of the position. So I'm going to borrow my A flat fingering, but I'm going to play C Phrygian. That's C to C with D flats in it, and E flats, and A flats, and B flats. And it sounds like this. And if you're ever playing, sounds kind of like that. The Phrygian's a really nice sound. And we're almost done for today. The Locrian is the 7th mode, and it has all of the things we've just named. It has a lowered 2nd and 3rd and 6th and 7th, but it also has a lowered 5th. Now, the Locrian is the 7th mode, and C is the 7th note in the key of D flat. So the C Locrian mode is fingered in the same position as you would play a D flat major. Well, all of a sudden, this 5th position seems like a really bad way to do this to me because there is no D flat scale close by, but there is one in the 6th position. It happens to be the 6-4 fingering of D flat major. But remember, we're not playing D flat major, we're playing its 7th mode, C Phrygian, right? Okay, so C, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C. And usually when we use the Locrian mode, we use use it for minor 7 flat 5 chords. So that's the Locrian mode. It's the 7th mode. Okay? So to review, if you learned your modes as well a Dorian as you start the scale on the 2nd note, that's not wrong. It's just not right enough. You have to do the extra step of making sure that you know the relationship of the chord and the mode itself. In other words, Dorian is for minor 7 chords, for minor chords. Why? Because it has a lowered 3rd and a lowered 7th. Lydian works with major 7 chords. Why? Because it has a major 3rd and a major 7th. So it's a lot to practice. So here's what I'd like to have you do. Next time you sit down to practice your scales, practice only all the Dorian scales, but practice the Dorian scales in all 12 keys. Okay? Making sure that when you play an A Dorian, that you're relating it to what major scale fingering? If it's A Dorian, G major, right? But make sure that you start and end on A, and for good measure, maybe play an A minor 7th chord when you start it and end it, just so that you make sure that you get the sound. And then maybe the next day do all the mixolydians. Okay? And you'll start to understand what I meant by muscle memory. A Dorian and D mixolydian in G major have a lot in common. They have the same fingering on the guitar. They have the same key signature. In that example, all the Fs are sharped, right? But they are not the same scale or mode. They're very different, very distinct, used for different things. This will get you going. Okay, talk to you guys later. Bye.